The T-bar row is one of, if not the best free-weighted row. From the golden era until now, many bodybuilders have built legendary backs with it, often preferring it over the also classic bent over barbell row, even though the movements look similar on the surface and do complement each other. So what was the major difference? The plates hitting the body, affecting range of motion? The torso angle? The cheating potential? The grip or handle itself? The true X factor is that T-bar rows are lengthened bias, given the landmine's unique circular strength curve. As I point out way back in 2017, before the studies came out, it maximizes the weighted stretch overload since the top straining is easier than the bottom. Now this is backwards compared to all other rows, yet is actually optimal. Something only expensive lever-based machines can match, including for vertical pulls. See, when the plates are on the floor, the barbell is positioned relatively flat, maybe slightly angled downwards. Then, as you drive the handle towards your hips, the bar becomes much closer to vertical due to its center of mass, even more so the taller you are or if you're raising the torso in synchronicity. This significantly reduces the moment arm, aka the horizontal force overcome from the landmine attachment, similar to what a free-weighted preacher curl does in terms of leverages and feeling at the top. Whereas regular rows maintain a fixed horizontal bar in space from start to finish, so the top will always be more difficult than a T-bar row, which is the least hypertrophic aspect of the row. The squeeze is not as important as the stretch. We can skip it entirely, cheat it through, or get it good enough like doing lengthened bias rows, which T-bar rows magnify. Only way to get a comparable effect is by doing cheap barbell rows with a bench block, but again, you're still compromising on the strength curve. Speaking of upper range of motion, almost everyone who got jacked from T-bar rows used big 45-pound plates, as this has consistently delivered the best results. Yet most influencers now prescribe 10 to 25-pound plates for more total range of motion. So how come none of the big bodybuilders do it like that? Well, those 45-pound plates that everyone complains about, that naturally cuts out the final squeeze, becoming a lengthened partial, and allowing heavier weights to be used to overload the stretch. And the hated V-bar that's apparently so restrictive? Same effect. You're stretching inwards and can assume the proper bend forward position in the bottom. Not too upright, but still benefiting from the landmine. Then, by cheating a bit, which, let's be real, everyone does starting around 3 to 4 plates, it perfects the circular strength curve by making the squeeze negligible and maximizing the weighted stretch. You're leveraging the ribcage in the stretching aspect, but not through the wrapping around the body. So with all these factors combined, we now have insane progression potential in a row that grooves us in the perfect position for back hypertrophy. So naturals can eventually hit 5 to 7 plates for reps with a high chance of doubling your current strength. The fact that there's endless progression potential solidifies it as a long-term mass builder. No wonder it's tried and true. The original T-bar row, once heavily criticized for its so-called cons, now proves to be its biggest strength, while being one of the most simplest, dummy-proof rows imaginable. Even if you butcher the form, your back will still get massive. This finally explains why Ronnie and Arnold favored cheaty T-bar rows. Now we understand. It's due to the barbell sleeve getting closer to vertical during the back squeeze, making it more lengthened bias than normal free-weighted rows. So we don't need to contract around the body. We just need to get stronger with horsing form. No crazy variations or special accessories required. Coach Kasim was right in defending the V-bar.
It could provide a valuable variation in your training so that you can challenge that lengthened position a little bit more. It's not going to be good for the short range of motion. So just understand that if you're going to implement that tool, use that tool for what it's beneficial and use a different tool for the other portions of the range of motion, that being a handle with a little bit wider grip that is going to allow you to get more range of motion, especially into that short position.
Which I greatly respect despite the vilification from those who cherry pick his content to attack the basics. Because the fact is, an exercise just needs to be lengthened bias enough, and T-bar rows certainly are. In fact, they're more than enough. They're mind-bogglingly effective for the stretch. So being a natural lengthened partial is 100% appropriate and actually recommended in this context. Pull explosively. Let the plates touch your body for standardization. But your arms won't be overly involved or prematurely stopping because of an arbitrary sticking point. Get that deep, painful stretch. The fact that the bar moves in a fixed arc makes T-bar rows a stable rowing option. It's the true optimal bilateral free weighted row. Literally no other row compares unless it's the same exercise with chest and shin support for less internal bracing. But if you don't skip your hip hinges, there shouldn't be a problem in the first place, which I'll get to later. So from a progression and movement pattern perspective, T-bar rows maximize the checkbox that matter for hypertrophy. You don't need to spend $5,000 on a prime rowing machine. No joke, a $20 landmine attachment or basic platform can literally take you to the pinnacle of back development. Realistically, the exact same gains can be achieved, and chest support is a luxury, not a necessity. From top to bottom, there are no weak links. In addition, using a neutral or underhand grip with bigger plates provides the perfect elbow tuck and enough active range of motion for lats, preventing anterior shoulder shifting and extra arm involvement. On that note, the retraction aspect for upper back thickness gains has nothing to do with arm bend. It connects to your scapula after all. Amputees can still retract. Here, we're just emphasizing a horizontal back angle. And just to say, even if you can't theoretically squeeze the upper back as hard, it still doesn't matter because we prioritize the most productive lengthened range. Opting for lengthened postures at the bottom alone optimizes overall back mass. This eliminates the need for a diverging attachment. Like, I genuinely regret purchasing one, as it worsens the stretch by forcing a more upright posture and limiting arm reaching. Here, the landmine, larger plates, and torso angles create a unicorn movement pattern that's unlike any other row. Again, I must emphasize, that's why cheat reps are so popular. It's not by coincidence or ego that those who got the best results from T-bar rows favored loose form. They couldn't articulate what made it so effective, but they intuitively felt it. Now we understand the difference. It's about overloading the bottom zone. By further evening out an already decent resistance profile, you push up the deceleration curve. So those advising textbook form on T-bar rows have it backwards. They lift light weights with perfect technique, using small plates for more range of motion at the top, then state that the regular way is overrated. The reality is, their on-paper improvements actually make the exercise worse. Maybe that's why bodybuilders who rode in the trenches for decades never did them like that. It's not that they were dumb meatheads who didn't think of this simple solution. Do you sincerely think they didn't try that? Especially during a time where machines weren't around? The T-bar rowing form you see in pumping iron was perfected through years of hardcore experience. And now, the science finally supports this dated form. Who's laughing now? Therefore, fully embracing the partial or seeking more ROM in the bottom, not the top, is crucial. Just as the old school greats did. They used 45-pound plates, but often stood on a mat or block to intensify the complete back stretch. Then, the dedicated T-bar rowing station came out, which mimics that exact position. That's what I use at the gym. So while the total range of motion was similar, the length and angles were intensified. It's essential to consider the relative degrees of joint range of motion. Here, you're no longer grinding through sticking points. It's smooth and there's enough distance where it matters. Regardless of big weight plates, the torso was always bent forward at the bottom, often rounding the entire back for complete development. This distinction is missed by the form police. The torso is not fixed. In fact, it's better to be upright at the top, with the bar closer to vertical, avoiding catching the weight by dipping the chest down to avoid excessive cheating. As long as you're not upright the entire time and hinge into the row, you'll lift the right loads with proper power technique. The biggest mistake by far is performing T-bar rows completely upright without deviation. Naturally vary the torso angle, ensuring you get low when the plates are also low. So the plates should skim the ground at the bottom, just before a dead stop row, sometimes even touching. If you've never accidentally done a Penley style T-bar row, it confirms your ego lifting. So my simple litmus test is having a bent forward torso when the arms are fully extended. You can even add a flexion component to your upper back to get more out of less weight. When you find this rhythm, your entire back grows. Speaking of which, regarding the lower portion and bracing, your spinal erectors should never give out unless they're severely underdeveloped, in which you should strengthen them, not avoid bent over rowing. They should be stimulated to a point that is slightly hypertrophic with many reps in reserve, not killing your recovery or leaving you feeling beat up for the rest of the session or week. So if your upper back is not failing first, then you are the problem, not the exercise. That said, you should still end your workout with T-bar rows for a superior stimulus to fatigue ratio, and also correcting this potential problem for 100% of lifters. This way, your upper back is pre-exhausted, but your spinal erectors are 100% fresh, eliminating any mismatch. This removes the need for chest support. I'm not saying you shouldn't use chest support if it's your first row, but if you're finishing with T-bar rows, it really doesn't make a difference whether it's chest supported or not. And you will be lifting about the same. This is exactly how Joe Bennett, the hypertrophy coach, trains his elite pro bodybuilding clients, including Terrence Ruffin. So if it's good enough for Terrence, it's probably good enough for you or me too. For home gym guys, this is truly a blessing because all you'll need is a landmine station or tennis ball to stick your bar in the corner. You don't even need a seal row pad. In fact, for lean lifters with prominent rib cages, you might get unbearable pressure pain or breathlessness when lifting heavy. I've always experienced this, and honestly, it's a major reason why I avoid chest support, even if there's theoretically higher motor unit recruitment given the lack of internal bracing. So I've tried using a foam pad or adjusting the seat height so that it's more ab supported, but it remains uncomfortable. I can't breathe, and I don't find that you're any stronger than being bent forward. If anything, there's greater ugly cheating potential since you can explosively raise your torso off the pad. A lot of guys do that and don't stretch low enough. I also dislike how most machines have too wide of a grip or lack the underhand grip, which is my personal favorite since you get the perfect mix of width and thickness given the arm tuck. So ironically, the machine chest supported variant can often be more restrictive. And again, until the 2000s, the vast majority of bodybuilders did free-weighted T-bar rows. They had strong, thick spinal erectors and never complained about bad pain because it's an overrated non-issue if you build the proper foundation. And for adding more volume on non-chest supported rows, they just favor less demanding variations, typically unilateral like one-arm dumbbell rows. So the answer is not to eliminate all lower back involvement from rows, just better manage your exercise order and or mix in extra variations that are less systemically taxing. As an added bonus, average lifters today often overlook bent over T-bar rows, leaving them readily available. The chest-supported T-bar row is almost always taken, and I'm not willing to wait for it as a finisher to my back workout. Now, if you're concerned about recovery, you can do T-bar rows once a week or space them between leg days if you're constantly bent forward. At least you'll get some extra frequency in, which can go a long way in bulletproofing your lower back, especially for strength and its carryover to deadlifts, and providing first-hand training data on how your body handles axial fatigue. This allows you to reevaluate the arguments against classic T-bar rows and reaffirm what the OGs never stopped advocating. They weren't stuck in their ways. They simply figured out the details early on. We know that for a fact now. So a lot of optimal bros are going to be eating humble pie. They should be ashamed of themselves for discouraging what has always worked for building a complete back, creating problems that don't play out in the real world. At any rate, the T-bar row remains a time-proven all-around back thickener. Its unique circular strength curve emphasizes the stretch over the squeeze, allowing for superior muscle growth. By using a non-converging bar and incorporating minor cheating, the row can be further optimized for long-term progressive overload. With intelligent exercise order and proper attention to your lower back, favoring T-bar rows can take you to the pinnacle of natural or enhanced bodybuilding. No complicated setup or expensive machines are required, solidifying its timeless glory as a staple in any serious bodybuilding program.